Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Course 3 for our summer series. Really excited to get started. I see a lot of people are still logging in. That's definitely fine. We're going to do a little bit of intro here. And so to start off with the intro, let's actually talk about who we are. My name is Curtis. I'm one of your Redtail trainers.
My name's Catherine here. And Curtis, where are you coming from today?
I am in Sacramento, California. So if you were actually in yesterday's training, you already heard this, but there might be new people, but I'm in Sacramento. And Catherine, you're over in a little warmer state, I believe.
Correct. We are in Chandler, Arizona this morning. Although I can't say we're hitting the hundreds today. I think that's actually tomorrow.
Oh, that sounds...
No, it's a balmy 93, I'm sure.
Right. All right. Well, Catherine and I are your trainers today for our Course 3 presentation. But what we want to do is talk about what the presentation format is going to be. And so if you joined us yesterday for Course 1, we covered history. So we talked about notes, activities, and workflow processes. Today, in Course 3, we're going to be covering the information side of the database, which is more focusing on the contact data. And then at the end of the day, we're going to talk about marketing itself. But also keep in mind, if you are registered for Course 4, which starts at 12:30 Pacific time, that is going to be ran by Haley and Austin, who are actually also on the line with us, but they're going to be the ones answering your questions for you. So we really appreciate having them on. So they can make sure that any questions you have. Now, if you do have a question, please feel free and type it into the Q&A section of Zoom, and that way we can answer it. So again, if it's a question about what's going on in the presentation, or you're not sure, you need to find something, they can definitely help you out with that. If you do have any questions that are more specific to like issues in your database, you can always definitely reach out to our support team, either email support@redtailtechnology.com or even call our number 1-800-206-5030, and it's option 3 to get to support. So you do have those options available. We also have posted is a PDF as well as the slides themselves that we're going to be going through. And so you will see that in the chat feature. So for today's course, you don't actually have access to the chat other than to view the things that we're posting, like the links themselves. But again, if you do have a question, feel free and then type that in, and then Haley and Austin can help you out there. Also, we have some polls that we're going to be doing at the end of different sections. So today's course has 2 different sections. Now, Catherine, you want to talk about the polls a little bit?
So as far as the polls go for this morning, if you have the actual Zoom application downloaded on your computer, those are going to work perfectly fine for you. Now, if you're looking at multiple screens, like I have 2 here, yours might pop up on another screen, so you might have to do a little kind of Sherlock Holmes to find that polling, but you should have access. Now, if you are joining us from that more web-based Zoom application, we have noticed that is a limitation on there. No worries, we still have the questions part of the actual presentation itself, so you can still follow along and kind of just keep your own honor system as far as like answering those questions. But you will see those polls pop up once we're there.
Awesome. And in regards to that as well, we're going to be going back and forth between slides and then scenario in the CRM. So a lot of the times when we're in the slide deck, we're going to be talking about the concept of how to set something up itself. And then after we do that, then what we're going to do is you'll see I'm going to switch over here. Ooh, 3 fingers here. We're going to actually switch over into the CRM and then show you how to do what we were just talking about. So keep in mind, if you're not sure if we're going to show you how to do something, we definitely will. But we're always going to first cover it and talk about it in a high level first in the slides. And then we're going to jump over into the CRM and show you how to do that. So with that, let's talk about today's agenda. So again, from today, from 9 a.m. to 10:20 is going to be information part 1. And we're going to talk about the contacts themselves and their database lists, how to navigate through the contact record, and then more specifically, just the contact details. So this morning, it is all about a contact record. Lots and lots of information there. Then we're going to take a 10-minute break, and that'll go till 10:30. And then at 10:30 to 12, we're going to be doing information part 2, which is then going to talk about more searching and then creating groups like our quick list, tag groups, reporting on the contact information. And then we're going to finish up with seminars and talking about our opportunities at the end of the day. All right, so keep in mind today's course is going to be going from 9 a.m. to 12 o'clock Pacific time. So again, because we're over on the West Coast, we're doing things on Pacific here. So with that, let's go ahead and start with information part 1. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday in regards to segmenting your activities and your notes, but we're going to do essentially the same format where we talk about segmenting your contacts at this point. So same thing where we talk about there's a high level and a detailed level. For your contacts, you have status, which is the highest level of customizable segmentation. We do have a higher level than that, which we refer to as contact type, which is individual, business, association, union, and trust. That is not customizable, but below that, you can use the status. Now, normally this is used for either their active, inactive prospect, they're deceased. Maybe you want to list who is a spouse of contact. The main point of having a status is to look at a contact and know exactly why they're in your database. So I can look at it and say, oh, they're an active client, or hey, they're a prospect. It's easy enough to find that information just based off of looking at the status. Now, the category is the next level underneath that, where you get to be more detailed. Okay, so if I have an active client, maybe I want to label them A, AA, or AAA. Other people do gold, silver, platinum, A, B, C, D. There's so many different variations that you can put for your categories, but it's more about setting up your client service model and how you want to group your contacts. So again, using the status and category is really useful for setting up and grouping your contacts based on who they are in comparison to you and your business. Now, on top of that, I want to talk a little graph here that shows not all the categories are going to be used for all the statuses. So I do like to keep that in mind. Even though the category list is going to have every single category available, you're going to only have certain ones that go with active. So you'll see on this graph, under active, I have A, AA, AAA. Under prospects, I use hot, cold, pending, lost. And then for businesses, I can do partner, vendor, wholesaler, or center of influence. You can also keep the category blank for contact. So it's not necessary. So for instance, if I have an inactive contact, I don't necessarily need to group them anywhere, so I can leave their category blank. Same thing goes with deceased. So you don't always need to have it. We do highly suggest if you can use a category, definitely do. Because again, it's all about how you're going to report and group those contacts together. Now, on top of status and category, we also have 2 other fields that are used for grouping, and those are going to be keywords and user-defined fields. Before we go into the database and actually start building out lists, I wanted to point these 2 out as well, because a lot of the times I see people try and put information that's too specific in their statuses. Catherine, I think you've seen similar things as well.
Oh yes, where you'll see it if they have like tax client, investment client, and insurance. It gets very finite. And then when they have a combination of both a tax and an investment client who have that shared, that's when you have even another status and another, and it just gets really messy really fast.
Exactly. So like Catherine's saying, we see a lot of people try and put the services they provide as a status. So instead of just having active client, like she said, it's tax client, investment client, retirement client. But because you can have the ability to be multiple types of clients, status is not the right place for those kind of fields. That's where we have things like keywords. They're used for yes or no questions where the answer is like an implied yes. And what I mean by that is you can create a keyword of tax client or investment client, retirement client, and add multiple keywords to one contact record. Whereas a status, one contact can only have one status and have one category. I don't want to have that status list get out of hand to where I have just too long of a list. Where keywords actually differ from user-defined fields is user-defined fields are more set for individualized answers. So whereas my keywords are ways where I can say, hey, here's a tax client, but maybe I want to also say what kind of meeting are we going to set up? And that's the example we're going to do. There's not a field in Redtail where I can say, what's their preferred meeting type? And what I mean by preferred meeting type is, would they prefer to meet in person, over the phone, or a Zoom meeting? Because at this point in time, again, we're in a world where Zoom meetings and like WebEx meetings are becoming more and more popular just with social distancing. So that might be a preference that you want to set, especially for a future when things start to open up, people are going to be more comfortable possibly at a Zoom meeting over an in-person meeting. So those are certain things we want to track. So in that particular case, I can create a UDF, and UDF stands for User Defined Field. So that means you get to define the field, what's in Redtail. You get to create them. So I can actually have different drop-down options for the actual preferred meeting type. And so these are both ways to actually use to actually segment your contacts for how you're dealing with them in your businesses. So let's actually jump into the CRM, and we're going to talk about those 4 main fields and how to set those up. So I'm going to switch over here. Just like yesterday when we were building into our database lists, what we're going to do is go to our name in the top right-hand corner and then choose Manage Your Account. Once we're on Manage Your Account, I can scroll all the way down to the bottom. And again, keep in mind, if you are an admin, you have access to the Admins Only section. If you are not an admin, you will not see this box and you will not have the ability to come down and select Manage Database Lists. So we are an admin. We're actually the database owner in this particular demo database. And I can select Manage Database Lists. And on the right-hand side, again, you're going to see Manage Lists over here. This is, again, a list of all the customizable lists that you can have. Yesterday, we focused over here on the activities and notes. We're actually going to be focusing up on top in the section that says Contacts. So you'll see there's quite a few different customizable lists that we can control in Redtail for our contact records. So let's start with Status. So I'm going to click Status on the right-hand side. And then you'll see I have the ability to hit Add in the top right-hand corner, and I can add to this list if I need. Again, this list we normally try and keep pretty short. You don't have to keep it to just a certain amount. I get that question a lot, is how many statuses should I have? It's kind of a hard question to answer because I don't necessarily know what kind of businesses you do. Every office runs slightly differently. We have a suggested list where we say things like you want to have an active client list, you want to have a deceased, inactive, prospect. These are all important things. We even have like spouse of client in here. Maybe you don't want to list the spouses as a spouse of client. Maybe you also want to list them as clients. That's definitely fine. But we have it in here because maybe we don't see all spouses as clients because maybe they don't have accounts with us. So we don't want to actually mark them as a client. It's really all up to your own interpretation about how you are organizing your own data. Now, again, over to the right-hand side, if I click on categories now, you'll see this list for category is normally a bit longer because it's supposed to build off of the statuses we have. If they're active clients, again, like I said, we have A, AA, or AAA. If they're businesses, we have relationship, vendor, wholesaler. Same thing for prospects, hot, cold, warm, lost, pending, all these options. But again, it gives us the ability to create different layers for the contact themselves.
And then
Now,
also,
keyword, oh, go ahead, Catherine.
sorry. Also to just kind of keep in mind when you're having your statuses in your categories, coming back to it, this is really going to be your way to use your own terminology in your office. I know sometimes we get so caught up on what we see here and we're like, ooh, I really like that. Ooh, I really like that. We kind of forget that, oh, there's some terms that we also use. So just kind of keep that in mind, is that we're showing you these examples, but definitely adapt it to what you really need in your office. So if you don't do an A, AA, AAA, and you do that gold, platinum, silver, whatever that scenario is, that's perfectly fine. I know, like Curtis is saying, sometimes we'll get that question of, is this too many? Is this right? And we're like, well, does it make sense to you? And if the answer is yes, then stick with it. That's perfectly fine.
And again, also in this list, if you find yourself not using one of these and you want to remove it, there's different tricks you can do. Normally we suggest make sure that none of those contacts have like AAA on them before you go and choose to delete it from this list. We've actually added in a little bit of a safeguard, because now when you go to delete something from this list, it'll actually pop up and it'll say, like, do you want to apply this to all existing records and change it over? So if I'm removing AAA, what do I want to put in its place? So you can actually choose what you want. And that's a great new tool for cleanup, so you don't have to go in and do bulk changes anymore. All right, now let's talk a little bit about keywords. Now, keywords I love because they can this list actually normally gets pretty large, but it can be built off of so many different things. I normally say if it's a type of service you provide, there should be a keyword for it. Now, in this demo database, you'll see we have a list of services. It's very long, but again, it's a training database. We do a lot of talking with other users, and we add things in here. But you can say, I have planning client, I have retirement client, I have tax client. So I normally suggest for any service you provide, where one contact or client can have multiple of those services, keywords is the best place to put it. Now, you'll notice all of these have a little dash in front of them. That is specifically because the keyword list is in alphabetical order. And so normally it's easier to find all the different services if they're grouped together alphabetically. Whereas if I had planning and tax client, those are going to be on opposite ends almost of the alphabet. I had to search for one up here, then scroll down. Putting little dashes or a number just to group them together makes it really easy. And so as I scroll down on my keyword list, you'll see I also have keywords that are marked with the word admin in front of them. So these are specifically keywords that my admin team uses. If I scroll down, I even have ones that have the word event. So if we do a golf event every single year, that's a great business tool. I need to mark that this person comes to our golf event. So I can create a keyword for it and easily pull them as part of that group to make sure that they get invited. Same thing goes for like holidays. If you send out different, holiday cards and you want to make sure that you're sending out the appropriate holiday card for your clients, you can create those different keywords and then apply them to the contact. I mean, you might even have a client who celebrates both Hanukkah and Christmas. Well, you could add both those keywords to their list. So that way you know that they're getting the appropriate holidays because they might celebrate both. Definitely an option for you. Also in regards to like a newsletter, that's also a great example. If I send out a newsletter, I want to create a keyword for it. It's something in my business that I do that I need to create a list off of. Keywords are the best place to do that. And so again, when I was talking about keywords versus user-defined fields, keywords are really, again, it's for an implied yes. If it's on their record, it means that yes, they get this service. Yes, they get this Christmas card. Yes, they get the newsletter. But in regards to a user-defined field, when I go back over to the right-hand side under contacts, I do want to point out user-defined fields exist in a few places. There's user-defined fields under the accounts, which is a little more specific than what we want right now. But also user-defined fields exist under the contact. So on the contact level, the person, I can click on user-defined fields. And then I have the ability to go in and create a field. And again, to create one, you just hit add in the top right-hand corner. You can type out what the field name you want to be, and then you can choose the field type. So Catherine and I were talking that we need to create a field to mark if our clients prefer to have a face-to-face, a phone meeting, or a Zoom meeting, like anytime we schedule with them. So we want to notate that on their record somehow. So in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to say preferred meeting type. And just as to keep this up at the top of our list, I'm just going to put these little asterisks right at the front. And again, that's just to keep it alphabetically because I want to show it at top because that's really important that I see it there. But I'm naming the field preferred meeting type. I can type whatever I want. Now I get to go into the field and say, how do I want to fill out the value of that field? I can choose something like any text where it's free form text. I can type whatever I want into the value of the field. I can put a date. I can do list of values, which I think is the exact one we're going to use today because there's 3 options. But you can also do a number, true, false, yes, or no. In this case, like I said, we're going to do a list of values. So I can come in here and say, we're going to do face-to-face. And I've already typed these in, so that's why it's filling out on my computer. We're going to do a phone call, or we can do a Zoom meeting.
Keep in mind that, yes, you might have a scenario where you can pick a list of values. Like I know in here we have something for alma mater. There's quite a few colleges out there, so not sure if you really want to pick those kind of list of values that might be more beneficial for those any text. So even though it might be something along the lines of, hey, there's already pre-existing values to pick from, if it's extensively large like that option of an alma mater can be, maybe an any text is a better option.
That's true. Actually, that's a great point. Because again, list of values means you have to type out every single option so it's available in a drop-down menu. But let's say, for instance, that you only care about certain colleges like in your area. Like if they went to, but maybe there's 5 colleges that you want to track. And if they went there, hey, then that's fine. You can choose list of values and then just put those 5 colleges. It comes down to how many do you actually want to type? You know, if you want to type out every single possible alma mater that existed, it's going to take you some time, but go for it. In that case, it might just be better to choose the any text so you can type it out and easily reference that from the contact record. So again, in this case, we are creating the user-defined field for a preferred meeting type, and we're giving the drop-down options of face-to-face, phone call, or Zoom meeting. And as soon as I do that, I hit add user-defined field. It adds it to my database list. And now I have the ability to actually go in and add it to a contact record, which I believe we're going to talk a little bit about the contact record. Yes, we definitely are. So let's actually go in and show you where you can put these fields. Now, navigating the contact, there's some high-level parts that we're going to talk about. First is going to be the overview bar. Like, you know, it's essentially going to show you their name, certain specific dates that are important. Then on top of that, we're going to talk about the contact card. That's essentially all the Rolodex data. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, about how the Rolodex data is just the basic information you have. You have a name and you have a way to contact them, whether a phone, email, if there's their actual address, or maybe it's a website, that can all go into the contact card. Then on top of that, we have the contact details. And this is where you can set up your status, your category, other important fields like the date of birth and the tax ID. And then we're going to focus on the one look section. And that's where we can add in keywords and the user defined fields. So you see, we are going to go in and add and talk about all the fields that we were. And now let's just switch over to the database and show you where to put that. So to go to a contact record, there's multiple ways. Again, I can choose search contacts in the top. I can start typing out the name. And it actually shows me people that match that itself. So you'll see Kevin Arnold is right here. I can even just hit enter on my keyboard and it'll show me any contact who has the name of Kevin in the list. But what's great is I'm just going to click right there, hit Kevin Arnold, go straight to his name. I love that new update with that drop down. It's easier to find people, makes it a little faster, less clicks. Now in this case, we're looking at Kevin Arnold's record. I am actually, let's start talking about his basic info first. So his name's Kevin. We can go over to the right-hand side if I need to change anything in this section. We have the actual edit basic info box, and I can check that. I can add in a nickname. I can change his job title. I can change his employer. This is even where I can go in and change the contact type. So earlier, again, I mentioned the contact type is the highest level of segmentation. This is actually going to come into play a little bit later when we talk about memberships. Okay, so keep in mind the contact type is very important with setting up the memberships and those relationships, which we definitely will cover a little bit later on. Next to that is we have an icon that's called the contact card, but you also see I do have the contact card here on my screen. The reason that we also have it here to where it comes up in a pop-up is any place that you're in the contact record. So let's say, for instance, I'm clicked over on the notes section of Kevin Arnold. So on the left-hand side, I clicked on notes. Instead of having to go back to his main page, I have access to these icons still, and I can click the contact card. So I can look at his notes without actually having to leave the page I'm currently on. And I absolutely love that feature. It makes it so I don't have to come back to the main page. It saves time and saves clicks at that point. Next to that, you'll see we have the important information. This actually exists in a few different locations in the database. This is actually the easiest place to locate it because if there's something written in this box, this circle is going to appear red. If there's nothing written in important information, it's actually going to be just hollow, just like the other ones. But if I click it, what this is for is specifically, I like to say it's things you need to know about the contact before contacting them. And so, for instance, we have don't call him Kev. Okay, so apparently, you know, when he was a kid, he was called Kev all the time. Now that he's an adult, he prefers to go by Kevin. And so he specifically told us, hey, I prefer you not to call me Kev. So we put that in here. Instead of putting that into a note where it gets filed away and not easily accessible, I can put that right top and center right here and see, oh, hey, before I call Kevin, I want to make sure that I don't call him Kev over the phone. I mean, same thing goes, I like to talk, my mother's the same way. Her name is Deborah, but if somebody calls and asks for Deborah, I knew as a kid that she wasn't home. I just said, oh, I'm sorry, she's not home, and I hung up. But if they called and asked for Debbie, I knew that they knew who she was. And that's important, especially with the relationship. You need to know how to talk to your clients. And if you have so many clients and you're dealing with people, it's best to keep those things that might normally just be in your head and put it somewhere in the database. It's easier to find that kind of information if it's underneath the important info.
Now, another thing that you can use with this important information is that if you have any family changes, I know that's a really good spot as far as like a quick 5-second rundown. If they're going through a divorce, probably a good thing to mention, hey, don't mention the spouse. So that way it's not immediately, hi, Kevin, how's the wife? And then go, oh, why would you mention her? And go on to this whole tangent. So if you have something like that, put it in there. If you have,
no, definitely.
Maybe it's exciting news. Maybe their kid's going off to college. And I know right now that's probably still like are they going to college? Are they going to be Zoom university? That's still exciting though. They still graduated high school. They're moving on to their next phase of life. So that's also something that you might want to give like a congratulatory on. So just wanted to throw that out there as an option as well.
Exactly. Yeah. This important information I've seen underutilized a lot. I've also seen it, people will say overutilized, but honestly, if it's something that doesn't need to go in as a note, but I need readily at my fingertips, important information, use it however you want, but fill that information out just to make it easier so you keep a good relationship with your clients. Now, next to that is we also have the common tasks icon. So when I click on that, this is things I can do with the contact. If I need to run a report specifically just for this contact or add them to a seminar or even like do a custom export. There's some integrations in here as well where we can send a laser app, MailChimp. You'll see anything that's turned on in regards to integrations that's a send to. A lot of them with marketing actually exist here as well as the integrations icon. But below that, we also have the profile form, the personal profile form. I love this because you can actually just click on it and it downloads a PDF that just has all their basic information filled out. So when I actually click and open it, you'll see that I can have, here's the personal profile form, all of his information, even the spouse information gets filled out, children's information gets filled out at the bottom, as well as on a separate page, they're gonna list the accounts. And so again, that's just an easy way to reference contact information real fast. I see people will print this out, hand it over to the contact, say, hey, has anything updated recently? I even know that if you go to our help desk and you search personal profile form, there's a page on it and you can actually download a PDF from that help desk page where it has just a blank copy. So if you want a blank copy of the form, that is available on our help desk. Again, just go to the help desk in the question mark and then choose search for personal profile form. Now let's scroll down a little bit and we're gonna go to the bar right below and you'll see we have this overview bar. This actually is gonna have certain dates. We dealt with it a little bit yesterday when we saw our active workflows, which popped up over here, but you'll see the next review date. This is actually that review item. So when we talked about setting up the client review, you can set up an automated reminder and we will dive a little bit more into that later when we talk about the other layers like the know your client. But you can set up a reminder of when you need to make sure and do the review. Also in regards to when their next activity is going to be and their last activity that was completed, if there was a last activity completed, we haven't done one yet, it'll have an actual date right here and tell you when's the last time you did something with this contact. Next to that, past due activity, same thing. If you have multiple past due activities, if this red number says like 5, well, you have 5 different things for Kevin Arnold that are past due, and maybe you need to look into that. So it's a really good way to manage and see what are these numbers. I need to take a look at it, make sure I'm staying on top of everything. Now let's scroll down just a little bit, and we're going to talk about the contact details. This is probably the most important section, I believe, for a contact record. Now, the reason so is it's telling you the status and category. And like I said, the status is there to tell you, why is this contact record in my database? So I can easily see Kevin Arnold is in my database because he's an active client. On top of that, the client service model I provide to him is he's a AAA client. So I actually have him grouped in a specific way. I can also see the source. This is another customizable list that you have control over. It's in the same place where you control statuses and categories. What I love about that is if you're adding in where your clients are coming from, you can run searches and reports to see, hey, how many clients am I bringing in from the radio lead? If I only brought in one client in the past year from the radio ad, maybe it's not worth it. So I can actually use the information in the database to see if I have a good return on my investments. So let's actually edit this box to where you can actually control this information. I can change the status from the dropdown, change the category. Same thing with the source. The referred by is free-form text. I can type in whatever I want in this page. It's again, so if they were referred by, and I can put Paul, I don't know how to spell Pfeiffer, you can type in like the full name. However you want to type it in, you definitely can. If it comes from a company name, this actually does not create a contact in any way. It's just free-form text, so you can type where they came from or who referred by. It's also searchable. So if the same person is referring the same people, you can run a search and see how many people were referred by Paul Pfeiffer and get a list based off of that. Also below that, we have advisor fields like servicing and writing advisor. Those are useful for marking who the client belongs to. As well as on the right-hand side, we'll have gender, tax ID, that's extremely important, marital status, and the anniversary. This is one of those dates that we talked about yesterday that automatically creates a reminder. So the marital anniversary date will automatically go in and give you a reminder of when that wedding anniversary is. So if that's important to you, that you celebrate your clients' anniversaries, definitely make sure you have that filled out so you can use those reminders. On top of that, you can mark things like client since. When did they become a client? That becomes really important, especially with source. So I can actually use how many people came from a radio lead in a specific year or in a specific date range. I can use that actual client since and actually know exactly where they're coming from. There's two fields on this box that actually don't show on the main screen. So on the main screen here, you won't see them until they're filled out. And I do like to point those out. So when I choose edit again, you'll see I have client termination date and date of death. So both of those aren't going to show blank on the page until they're actually filled out. So if you do, if a client does leave, becomes inactive, you can mark when they left. And again, that's a great way to track how many clients are coming in versus how many clients are going out. I can see where I'm at in regards to my business with my clients as long as I'm filling out these fields. And then below that, we have the date of death. Now, a few things with the date of death. This won't automatically change a status or anything, but if you fill out the date of death, it will automatically disable the birthday reminder right here. And the birthday reminder means they're not going to pop up in your reminder itself. So you're not going to see to wish them a happy birthday. And it also, if you choose to run a birthday report, and that's from the contact page, you can run a report that's called birthday report. If their birthday is disabled, their birthday reminder, they will not appear on that birthday report. Now, you don't have to keep the disabled it just for deceased clients. Maybe there's some clients who they don't want to receive birthday information or reminders, or maybe with your client service model, you can go in and mark only my double and triple A's have the birthday reminder enabled. My single A clients, I don't send birthday cards. So depending on what you do, you can actually disable that birthday reminder in bulk for specific contacts. And a lot of that's going to be covered. We'll show you how to do that when we talk about searching later on after our break today.
Now, one thing that could be really helpful with that client since, because every now and then I will get the questions of, yeah, it's nice to know when they became a client, but it's just another field for me to fill out. If you've had clients for 10, 20 years, that's something that can be really exciting to send them as like a, hey, thanks for sticking around with me. So that might be where we have that value, but then we can also utilize like those UDFs to say, hey, you know what, this is their favorite restaurant. I'm going to send them a gift card, or hey, they really like this particular flower. So that's where we can kind of combine utilizing those fields to help really implement that relationship building that we're trying to do with our system. Awesome.
And actually, that's a great point, because after contact details, like Catherine was saying, there's user defines and keywords to fill out even more. So I'm going to click on the keywords and tags right here, and you'll see these are all the keywords that are attached to Kevin. So Kevin Arnold is a 401k planning retirement tax client. If I hit the add button, I also have the ability to remove certain items. So if he's no longer a retirement client, I can uncheck that. I'm going to keep a check for this particular item, but you can go through and select as many keywords from that list that you want. Okay, so let's say maybe he also is a trust account. I can just select multiple items here, but every keyword you have puts him as part of that group. And again, it's an implied yes. If there's a keyword on the contact, it means that they get that particular service that you're having to group them in that way. Next to keywords and tags, I can click UDFs. And again, UDFs is user-defined fields, which means you created the field. I already have a few set up on Kevin, so we can easily see that his coffee preference, piping hot with a dash of creamer. Favorite movie, I like to track that. I had The Princess Bride, and then RMD taken. This is actually a good one to use. If you need to track, did they take their RMD, yes or no, maybe for a particular year, we've created user-defined fields for each year, RMD taken 2020, RMD taken 2019, each one. And then remember, you can choose how the value goes in, and we chose for it to be a yes or no. Even though we said keywords are for yes or no questions, it's an implied yes. So sometimes we need to know, is it a yes or is it a no? It's very important. So in that case, like an RMD, we need to know, did they take their RMD, yes or no? At this point, I can see Kevin has not taken his RMD yet. And that's great information to have. Now, on top of this, I also want to go in and add that user-defined field that we created, his preferred meeting type. So yesterday when we were talking to him, maybe we did a Zoom meeting. He's like, hey, I love these Zoom meetings. Can we continue to meet this way until everything's safe, to go out and interact? When social distancing dies down, I want to continue to do Zoom meetings. Perfect, no problem. Let me add that in. So I'm going to choose add in the top right-hand corner. Now I can select what user-defined field I want to add to this contact. And you'll see I have preferred meeting type right at the top. And then from here, here's those items that we created. So I can actually choose, he's going to be Zoom meetings. Now, again, it's easy just to come in and find anytime I'm scheduling for Kevin, if I go to his record, I can say, okay, it's going to be a Zoom meeting. So I have that information readily available from the user-defined fields.
Now, you can also kind of use a combination of user-defined fields and keywords. Like coming back to that RMD take in 2020, Kevin's rather young. He's not going to meet that 70 and a half or 72 requirement, depending on when that would have been required. So he would have had something like an inherited IRA. That might be better to track with that keyword, because that's coming back to what Curtis is saying, is that if we add that as a keyword, that is an implied, yes, that is something that affects him. So I think he has it. Oh, perfect. He does.
Yep.
You can
so I already have them marked.
So that way, when you run a search, if you were to do a search off of like an age, which we'll be talking about later on, he's obviously not going to meet that age requirement, but we can also do a search off this keyword and go, okay, here's another situation that we need to keep in mind.
Perfect. All right, so let's jump back over into our slides. And Catherine, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit more about the other layers inside the contact.
Perfect. So now that we've gone over kind of like the main front page of the contact itself, there's even more layers that go into our database. Because again, the more details that we fill out, the better our actual data is going to be. The more information, the better we can serve our clients. So we have a few of them in here. The Know Your Client, which we're going to cover in depth as far as like the client reviews. That's that section that you can track that reminder and build that in. You can also set permissions for your contacts. So I know I feel like this has really been a theme lately. I've had a bunch of offices reach out to me going, hey, I only want to see my clients. While I care about my coworkers and I know that they're doing well, I don't necessarily want to see their clients at this moment. That's where that permissions comes in. We're also going to cover in depth with accounts and family and memberships in just a second, because that's a lot of details we want to jump into. But let's actually hop into the CRM and take a look at the Know Your Client and then the permissions. So to get to a Know Your Client, we're going to come over to the left-hand side. Still under Kevin himself, you'll just see it's about 5 down. You'll see Know Your Client there. We'll go ahead and click on that here. And by default, we actually come to this client review reminder. Now, we get the question all the time, how do I go back in history to see when they had their client review? And everyone always comes to this client review reminder section. That's not actually how this is intended. The client review reminder itself is just to say, hey, this is when we're going to hopefully meet with them around this time frame. I know yesterday Curtis had given the example of his birthday's the 23rd, mine's the 22nd. Those dates themselves could fall on a Tuesday and Wednesday. And I know for a fact, neither one of us want to celebrate during the week. We'd rather have it on the weekend. That's really what this is implying, is that, hey, if that first review date, it might fall on a weekend itself. I highly doubt Kevin's going to want to come in on a Saturday to have his client review. So what this is saying is that, hey, based around what you set up as your parameter, which it looks like right now we have it set to monthly here, he's supposed to come in on May 22nd. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that for sure he is coming in. He could be coming in next Wednesday. He could be coming in next month. Maybe he is completely unavailable for the next month and a half. He can't come in until July 2nd, something like that. That is totally possible. But based around a reminder, this is just coming in here. Now, if we click on edit, so if yours is blank or if you need to change their parameter, you definitely can. I was working with an office recently who, when they have a brand new client, it originally starts out with a 90-day time frame. But after that 90 days, that's when they'll switch it to every 6 months. So the first one is 90 days and then it switches. That's where they actually came in with this recurrence, set it originally for 90 days. Once that meeting was then reminded, hey, they came in. Once that meeting was actually scheduled with an activity, that's when they came back in, changed the custom to 6 months. So when you have that recurrence, you have the different options of annually, but you can also use every 3 months, every 4 months, every 6, every 8, whatever you want to set in here. That's completely up to you. Now, if you're looking at the repeat on and you're staring there going, how in the world did they get monthly on day 22? Or the other option, if you want to click on that, Chris, monthly on the 4th Monday, that is based off of what we put in for that first review date. So January 22nd is that 4th Monday of that particular month, and it happens to be the 22nd of that month. So definitely keep that in mind that this is your reminder only. This is not the actual client review themselves. This is saying, hey, you should meet with them. Actually going in and adding an activity like we had shown yesterday, that's the actual client review itself.
Correct, because even like you were saying, people ask, where's the history? When did we have their client review? That is the activity. The activity is the history of when it happened. You can run reports on that really easy to find out this is when their client review was. But again, this is the reminder. If you're finding yourself saying, I don't want it to happen on a weekend and it keeps falling on a Saturday, it technically shouldn't matter that a reminder falls on a weekend, because you should always be proactive about your reminders. If it's the 22nd, itself, and like it says the reminder is today and you're calling on that day, you're already behind. Yeah. Because I want to plan ahead. I want to make sure I schedule him on an activity on the 22nd, not call him to schedule the activity. Exactly. Because maybe he can't come in for a month, 2 months. I need to be prepared. So that's why reminders should always be proactive.
Exactly. So definitely, at least getting this will give you that start to, again, what Curtis is saying there, at least initiate that concept of, hey, this is what I now need to do. So definitely in terms of getting that reminder, this is that spot to come in. Right below that, we have our written agreements review, which this is more just to fill in the text here. It's not anything that you can really edit. Same if we come to the left, we have financials as well. Similar in concept, it's a lot of just, hey, let's plug in this information that we have here. It's not really editable sections, I should say, not editable fields, but you can make those entries as possible. Scroll down just a little, just so we can see it all here. So again, none of these, we get the question all the time, can I change this particular heading? And currently, no, you can really only fill it in, so you can always adapt it to how you need it. Scroll back up for me here, Curtis. Coming to the left again, there's that important information. So I know Curtis had said it earlier, there's multiple ways to add to a contact or search a contact. There's multiple spots you can find this important information. So you always have that red circle if there's information, or if you happen to be maybe looking at the client reviews and you just want to hop down, you can always do that here as well. Under miscellaneous client information, this is again similar to what you see when you're on that main Kevin Arnold front page that we are on. However, something that's unique to this section is that personal interest. So I always like to point this out because this is also searchable. And if there's something that you share in common and you want to know, because maybe we're hoping to have like a sailing event and you want to only invite those who are really enthusiastic about sailing, I can always go and say, hey, who has this interest, and find, oh, Kevin Arnold meets that perfectly. So it's those unique things that we share with our clients that we can then search upon. And then scrolling down just a little bit further there, we also have those keywords making an appearance again. So again, this is just one of those things that, hey, there's multiple spots to find it because it's extremely valuable in terms of adding that organizational layer and really answering those, who are they to us and what information do I need to remember about them? That's where this is really coming in. And then scroll back up, we have one more section here, and that's professionals. So we're going to be talking about family and memberships in just a couple minutes, but one often, I don't want to say ignored, but forgotten, I think it's something that we just don't know is in the system, is our professional contacts. So if we actually look in the middle here, we actually have two professional contacts listed. We have Paul Pfeiffer and we have Jake Miller. They're both an attorney and assurance. So they are contacts within our system itself, but this is something that we want to keep track of. Maybe we deal with Paul for any of those like attorney situations, or we need to consistently get Jake involved with those insurance. This
That's
is one of
Jake
those,
from State Farm, correct?
that is Jake from State Farm, yeah.
Okay. All right.
He knows his stuff.
All right.
So this is really helpful to track those professional contacts. I get that question, it seems like religiously, of, hey, I have to track their CPA, or hey, I need to track their attorney. I don't know where to put it. And then I'll show this location. They're like, are you serious? Is this new? And I'll go, it's new to you. So yes, it's new. So professional contacts, again, this is one of those items you can track in here. Curtis, go ahead and click on add for that for a second here, because there's something I want to point out. When you click on add, you have some system types. However, if there's something that isn't really something you want to mark as other, it's something specific, you can add your own in here. That's also in that managed database list that we were at earlier for those status and categories and keywords and UDFs. So in that same section, you'll actually see professionals as well. So
I do want to point out that these custom types are that they are custom. So keep in mind, even though that we have beneficiary as a custom type here, that is not the place for beneficiary for the integrations, like trying to send that over to Laser App. Unfortunately, that just isn't how it connects because it's custom to your database. Also, we do have fields for beneficiary specifically inside the accounts, which we definitely will show. But I do want to point that out, that this is just, it says beneficiary because it's custom.
right.
But if you want to list who they specifically are, this is one place you can put it.
Definitely. So that's that know your client section. Again, it's a lot of it is just kind of filling in that blanks to really capture more of that data that doesn't fit anywhere else. Now, if we go ahead and click on that more option, let's go ahead and show if we want to set permissions or roles on this specific contact. Now, again, this is coming back to saying, hey, if I only want to see this contact, or we're logged in as Tucker McLaughlin for this database, maybe we only want Tucker's team to see this. This is where we can come in and set these contact permissions. So this one, actually, we already have some permissions built in here, but you know what, Curtis, maybe Jeremy doesn't need to see this contact anymore. We're going to take him off. You can always remove those permissions as well. Again, that's coming back to those questions of, well, what if we have someone who leaves the firm? Well, good news, you can always remove them. Or if you've got kind of the shuffle, I know I have an office that they're doing some shuffling around and the CSA is moving to someone else, so they're playing this game of shuffling. You can always switch those users to see those different permissions. So you
And I do like to,
oh, go for it.
oh, sorry. I do like to mention the contact permissions. A lot of people assume that if I set myself on the permission, it means I'm only seeing those contacts. It's kind of opposite. It means you're the only one allowed to see the contact. You'll still see every other contact that doesn't have permissions on it unless they're permissioned away from you. This is really just saying, I'm making sure this contact, it's sort of like you're hiding the contact. I'm going to hide this, but only I'm telling these people where the contact is. That's sort of like what the permission setup is. But even though we removed Jeremy, if he's part of Tucker's team, he'll still see the contact. So do keep that in mind. Like, you can be as part of a team or on individually as whether or not you're going to have the ability to see or find the contact in the database.
Exactly. One more thing as well, if you are the database owner, you're still going to see everything anyways. So just wanted to keep that in mind. I know we always have that problem every now and then where they're like, well, I don't want to see everyone. It's like, you're the database owner, you're kind of the all-seeing eye, you're going to see everyone. So this is to help as far as like kind of list within a list type of scenario. It's permissions within the contact itself. But this is, again, what Chris is saying, it's only making it so that way you're hiding it from everyone else, unless you have specific people you want to see. And then roles right below that, that actually comes back into play with what we were talking yesterday with those workflows. So if we did have those workflows for like a client review, every advisor needs to do that, but we each have our own clients. This is where that roles comes into play. So for Kevin, Tucker's the advisor, Rick's the associate advisor, and we actually have Curtis as the CSO. Oh, nope, I'm the associate now. I'm the associate advisor, and Curtis is the CSA. So now if we were to utilize a workflow that had a task of associate advisor, I'm now going to have that task assigned to me based on how this role is set up. So again, if we had switched this like we had previously Rick would have received that particular task. So this is just coming in here to help, instead of building the same workflow 12 different times for each different advisor and their team, we can utilize those roles instead so the system can do that work on assigning out who actually should be doing it for that specific contact. So,
now, I do want to say one thing about the permissions roles page. You actually have to be an admin in order to see this page. So if you go over to the left-hand side, click on more, and you don't see where it says permission/roles, it means you don't actually have admin permission to change this information. So you do need to have those set up for your username in order to go in here. If you don't, you need to talk to either another admin or the DBO of the database. So you can either have those or they can change it for you. But again, it is a permission, so only admins can view or change this information.
right. It's coming back to that same analogy of the managed database list. We just don't want too many people coming in and making decisions that could possibly have a negative impact on everyone else. So that's really where that's coming from. So we've covered Know Your Client. We've covered permissions. I know there's two more things we want to talk about. The first one is actually our accounts themselves. So our accounts is really just kind of that screenshot as the numbers that we have in here. How is this contact's financial wealth doing right now? What is their kind of big picture number? Now there's two ways to actually get an account into the CRM. The first is the old school manual, click, apply some values, get it in here. Nothing wrong with that, but that is one way you could do it. The other way is via an integration through a data feed. So whether that's through a custodian, or I know some broker dealers have it directly through, you have both of those ways. So let's actually hop into the system and let's manually add one, because we need to get, looks like Kevin has a new insurance policy we want to add in here. So let's come on back up on the left-hand side, still under Kevin specifically, we're going to click on accounts. So once we're here, we'll take a look, and actually before we click add account, if you see anything that has that flag that says linked account, that actually is where you should immediately see that that is actually a data feed. So that flag's already there. There's other flags which we'll point out when we actually add an account, but I just wanted to point that one out in case you're ever wondering, hey, did I do this one or is this one coming in? But if we want to actually add an account, we'll come over to the right, click add account, and then we'll get our pop-up to fill in this information. So we're just going to fill in some account numbers, give it some value here. We can scroll down, pick our type here. And this one should just be like maybe like a life insurance one, individual life.
We'll do like individual life. I do like to point out that the account type is also customizable. It's one of those, we just briefly showed you where it was in the database list, but you can come in here and add to this account type. So you might see that we have something a little bit odd, like kidnapping insurance, something like that. If there's not a type that doesn't exist, you can definitely add it in there if you need to track that. But like I said, we're just going to add this as like an individual life account. And the reason we're doing it as like an insurance is because insurance accounts don't feed into the system. We don't have any integrations with insurance accounts feeding. It's all going to be investment accounts and things. So anything that comes from Allbridge, Investigo, there's quite a big list that custodians and data aggregation companies that can feed in. But again, insurance accounts unfortunately do not. So that's why we're going to add this manually, because we want to add in a value for an insurance account so we can track that information.
So again, we've got that type we pick from our list, and like her saying, if it's not there, we can always add it. And then again, we'd fill out if there's any company, product, manager, model, strategy. And on the right, we have our status of open, definitely want that. And then we could check off, these are kind of those additional flags that I was just referencing on whether it's held away, managed, discretionary, and then tax qualified. And then if you actually click that tax qualified type drop down, that is also something I believe we actually just changed. It was like,
This is a newly customizable list. Before, this dropdown was not customizable. It is now, with the recent update, you can add to the tax qualified type. We were getting a lot of requests for that, and it's great because there's other options that weren't available, and now they can be.
right. So definitely fill this in with what you need. This is pretty much all we need for this one. So we're going to go ahead and add this account in here. So now we have at least the start. Now we still need to actually add in a balance, because it's one thing to have the account, but if we're looking at it, we're seeing a whole nothing. So right under this account assets, we're going to come on over to the right, and you're going to see an add button. So we'll go ahead and click on that here. And then this one, we can, if there is a policy name, you can put it in here. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of use this system to help us keep track of how much this actually is. So under that shares, we're actually only going to put a 1, because again, this is just going to track how much we have. Now let's say, yep, perfect. Like, you got it. Curtis is reading my mind here. So what this is saying is that,
and again, like, this is an insurance account. It doesn't have shares or a price, but we want to do its value. Again, that's just what we're saying is it doesn't have shares. We're just tricking the system to give this account value because it doesn't necessarily have those.
exactly. So that's how we're just kind of adapting the system to work for us in this case. So we have 1 share. Again, it's not really saying 1 share, it's just saying the price value of 500,000. So we can go ahead and add that account asset. And now we have that showing right here, but also under that top bar, we have that $500,000 balance now reflecting under this actual account. So that's how simple it is as far as adding that account assets. You can always add in more information down here. So coming back to what Chris was saying earlier when we were under professionals, there's that beneficiaries over on the left-hand side. If you need to add account dates in here, maybe you have like the policy date opening or something like that you need to track, you can always add this information in here. Something else that I feel we mentioned it when we had the managed database list, somehow still always kind of gets forgotten when we're in the account itself. If you scroll all the way down, there is account user defined fields as well. So if it's something that doesn't necessarily apply as a user defined field on his contact record, but it's applicable to this particular account, that's where this is really coming into. So I always like to point it out because I said, I feel like it gets lost. A lot of people are like, oh, it only exists on the contact record. And I'm like, oh, no. There's another option here, and this really could help. So,
and this is a place where when people say, hey, I want to list like the commission on certain accounts, you can create the field of commission amount and then put the value of that. Again, these are specific to things inside the account itself. Even though we have like RMD ones here as well, maybe you want to list it, the RMD taken for specific accounts. That's where you can put them. It's all at your discretion on how you want to fill those fields.
Exactly. One other thing here as well, since we're on this page, and I don't want you to scroll up here, if you're looking slightly to the right there with the other, you had the activities notes. If you had an activity like we did yesterday, or a note yesterday where it was referencing a specific account, it also reflects here. So similar to like our contact card where you don't need to leave the page to find out what's connected with it, if there was something there, we would be able to just click on that there and go, oh, we actually talked about this particular account with Kevin 3 weeks ago, or whatever that case might be. So we're really—
and actually we can do add a note straight from here and link it there. There's 2 ways to do it. I could just click on this number and go into it. I actually prefer, and this is just personal preference, use the quick add, do a note right from here, and I can type out the note, so added new account, any information you need to put. And then scrolling down here where I choose the accounts, I can select the one I just added. So anytime you add a note, and then if it just refreshes this page, you're gonna see that number build. So right down here, now there's 1 note that's attached, but that note is also still on the contact record. It's a great way to make sure that every thing stays linked together.
Exactly. So just wanted to point that out because again, it's one of those things we don't think about. It's there, we know it's happening, but we don't realize it's actually there. So utilize the system to really input that information so it's not getting lost in our head. I can't remember everything. I highly doubt everyone can remember everything with every single contact. So fill in as much as we can, because the better it is when it comes to reporting later on, or if someone else is new to your office, you don't have to sit there and have a whole hour conversation filling them in. They can take a look at, see, oh, hey, under this account, here's this, this, and this. Under this account, here's the commission on it. Under this account, this means that. So really utilize this information. Let's actually come back to the accounts page really fast there, Chris, because there's one more thing I want to show when it comes to accounts, and that's actually family accounts. So if you do have a contact who maybe both husband and wife, or whatever that living situation is, they both have accounts, but you don't want to leave the page to go see what Winnie has, under options, you can actually show family accounts. So if we actually click on that here, we'll load in a second here. Perfect. We now have 8 open accounts, so we can actually see all of Winnie's accounts from here as well. So again, I kind of get those questions where it's like, hey, do I have to always open up Winnie as a new tab and take a look? And I'm like, no, by all means, you can show that family history here, all under this show family account section, and have that kind of quick snapshot. So this again is just coming in there to make it easier on you. And then as Curtis was pointing out there, those flags, any of them that have that family flag are the ones that are actually associated with Winnie. So easy way to figure out whose it is.
And it'll, when you hover over, I actually had that question of the day. They're like, it says family, but I don't know whose it is. Again, just hover over the flag and they're going to pop up. I'm pretty sure it was updated recently too, but you can also show like the non-primary, if there's a joint account, but that's not, you're not part of that family, you can also click show the non-primary joint account. So if Kevin is on in a joint, maybe with, another family member who's not in his immediate family, and I want to see, you can definitely show it that way too.
Perfect. Which, talking about family, let's hop back to the CRM and let's talk about it, because there's actually some very important details when it comes to family versus memberships. Now, when we talk about family at Redtail, we're actually talking about the tax definition of family. So think of them as your spouses and your dependents. If I can't claim them on my taxes anymore, not a family to us really anymore. That's where memberships come in. So family is really helpful for some like form fillers like Laser App and Quick. It also is really helpful in terms of linking those contacts themselves. So like with Kevin, we know that for a fact he's got a wife, he might have some children. We'll take a look at that there. But memberships is that section to track pretty much everyone else. So if you're ever going, well, you know what? I had these 2 as parents. They had a son. Now that son is 18 and he's also a client now. How do I track that? We get that question all the time. That's where memberships are going to come in, because you can only belong to one family at a time. So if they are married on their own, that's where memberships are going to come in. So let's go back to the CRM here. Let's start off with family, show how that all works, and then we'll jump into memberships. So we've already created our family. We have that the Cooper Arnold family, and you can see it's married to Gwendolyn Winnie Cooper. If you didn't have this option, you're still seeing create a family. Click create a family and you're going to name that family. Now, when it comes to naming that family, we just recommend keeping it consistent. If you have a whole bunch of different ways of doing it, that's when if you try to use like a mail merge, you're going to see some real inconsistent labeling. So again, just try to make it as consistent as possible. But when we
actually, that's a really good point. Is I like to say fill out the family name as how you want to address the household on a label, because sometimes, like for instance, Winnie didn't take, she's a hyphenated name, yep. Cooper Arnold. Like how do I want it to appear? Do I want to say Mr. and Mrs. Arnold? Probably not necessarily. I'm going to still send it to, I want to say, hey, the Cooper Arnold family. Like it's addressing as a whole. You type out whatever you want, even if that person is an individual. Hey, Mr. Kevin Arnold, or just Kevin Arnold. However you need to address them in a formal way, like on a letter, is normally how you want to fill out that family name.
Exactly. So that we have here is the Cooper Arnold family, or if you'd rather have it as Mr. and Mrs. Cooper Arnold, however you want to do it, just stick with that theme. Also create a family for those singles out there. They're still part of their own family. I know a lot of people, when they have that, they'll just name it like Kevin Arnold, and that is the family itself, and that's fine until they get married, then they'll change it. So just keep in mind they're their own family too. But in here, we can immediately see Kevin Arnold is our head of household. We have the spouse of Gwendolyn Cooper Arnold. Now, what happens if they were to get divorced? Are they permanently stuck this way in the system? No, you just come on over to that actual, kind of looks like a mini family tree, and you can actually remove them from that family. Same scenario if you have it where the adult of, let's say, Fred Arnold is now old enough, he has his own family, he's the client himself. I'm going to want to break him out of this family because, again, you can't belong to two families at the same time. You can only be one. So we'd remove him from this family. And by removing him from this family, it's not deleting his contact record. There's always that fear of, oh, I'm clicking a red button. What's this going to do? It's just removing him from this family, not from the CRM completely. So if we were to search for him, he's still going to pop up. He's not going to completely disappear on us. We can still see him in here. So in here, we can then go ahead, create his new family. We can name it, again, maybe this one's Mr. Fred Arnold. And then that way we create his family, and then he has his own, should he have a spouse, or maybe that's not something that's yet, we can add that later on. So that's how it is when we actually have a family that needs to kind of break apart, break down. But what happens when we still want to track Fred to Kevin himself? That's where memberships come in. So over on the left-hand side, we're going to scroll down until we see that more option again. And then we're going to look for memberships. So again, memberships are all of those other relationships in here. So it could be this father-son relationship. It could be neighbors. Maybe that's something you want to track. It could be exes. I know that is something still a lot of people like to track. It could be maybe even referrals. If they have their employer already filled in, that will automatically auto-populate in here. But let's go ahead, let's add Fred back to Kevin here. So we can come on over to add, and then our linked contact, we're gonna start to search for Kevin. Like pretty much everything else in the system, we'll wait for it to load and we'll click on the actual correct person. And then we're gonna fill out who this is to Fred. So our linked contact is actually the father, because again, the linked contact is Kevin. I believe we have that perfect. And then our contact itself, again, that's the person we're currently on. That is, I want to say we have son, actually.
I think we definitely do. So again, like it's all up depending on how you want to label the relationship itself. Like I like to point out, like Catherine said, it could be neighbors, it could be exes. Let's say, for instance, that me and Catherine were both in a database and someone wanted to list what is mine and Catherine's relationship to each other. Most people might think it's just coworkers or co-presenters. It's actually, I see Catherine as my best friend. And then you explained to me, you said, I am your
close
workplace proximity associate. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Catherine's my best friend. I'm her workplace
proximity.
Yes, proximity associate. Perfect. Done. There's two different sides of the relationship, as goofy as that sounds. But keep that in mind. If there are two different sides, sometimes it's the same word. Like if they're cousins, their cousin and cousin goes both ways. Brother and sister, two different terms. This is all about defining the relationship between two different people in your database. And so again, like this is the father-son. If you want to list it as parent and child, there's definitely that option for you as well. It's all up to you depending on how you want to label those memberships.
Exactly. So we'll go ahead and add that one. Now, the one other thing we really want to focus in on when it comes to memberships is that this relationship, those kind of pairings, that father-son, the parent-child, however you want to label it, it's going to still be based ultimately off of that type of that contact record themselves, because we have here as individuals linking individuals, but if we have something like a trust, that's not really an individual. Similarly, if we have like an employer, that's where we're going to come in with more along the lines of a business. So if we come in here, let's say that they're actually part of the trust.
We don't have an Arnold Family Trust, but if we created a contact record that's a trust account, we can select it. And what she's saying is, you'll see there's different options in here. And again, the options appear based on the contact type. And that's really important. that may or may not appear on a pop quiz in just a few minutes.
So go ahead and click cancel. So we just added the one for Fred. Let's actually go back to Kevin's. Let's take a look at his as well, just so you can kind of see that really quick, because I know he has a couple more. Because we also have his employer filled out, which again, that's one of those, if you have an employer filled out, that's one that's automatically added in there for you. So we have that business type reflecting employee to employer relationship. So again, family, tax definition, usually only spouses and dependents, or again, if you want to think of it as I can claim them on taxes type of scenario. Memberships, pretty much everyone else. If it's that third cousin twice removed, that's also a client. Link them if you'd like. So again, that's where those main differences come in. So I know we always get those questions. What happens if? This is how you do that. You'd break them from that family. You'd still connect them with that membership. So that way you still know, hey, they know each other. They're not forgotten. We don't have to remember it in our brain and go, I think they're related. No, that's where this membership comes in. So I believe, Curtis, that takes
taking us to some review.
It does. So what we were saying earlier, we have a poll set up here. There are 4 questions. You will have to scroll down to just make sure after you get to that second one, you keep scrolling down for 3 and 4. But we'll have 4. I'll go ahead and launch that here. And let's see if it'll cooperate with me today. Just started it here. The first question.
And I'm putting them up on the slide as well. So if you don't have that pop up to interact with the poll questions, that's fine. Still go through the ones on the screen and answer the ones as best you can.
Perfect. I haven't seen anyone come in. This is anonymous, so don't be afraid to click some answers here. We promise we won't judge too harshly. We will judge, of course. There we go. Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, is it not working yet?
So let's I'll go and start reading the questions, and then after we'll review them itself. So first question itself is fill in the blank. Good data equals blank data. So is it busy, detailed, superpowered, or clean? Second question is accounts can be added into the CRM in what 2 ways? Easy or difficult, literally or theoretically, basic or advanced, or manually or via integration feed. Those are the options you have for how do you get an account into the database. Third question is what field is used to connect memberships in Redtail? So we just talked about this. What field is used to connect memberships in Redtail? Is it status, category, type, or source? And then the last question is going to be what contact relationships are linked in the family section? Is it literally every family member? Is it spouses and dependent only? Third cousins? Or an Amazon courier? Well, it possibly might be that.
I mean,
but
I feel like I've ordered a lot of stuff from them lately, so they are family.
I mean, are you going to start, marking your Amazon courier on your tax forms?
You got it.
All right.
Although I am waiting for someone to be like, well, I am married to someone who actually is this, which case that might be right. So
I like to say, if you can give me a good argument for one of the other answers, hey, sure, it's right.
All right,
let's.
about 5 more seconds here. I still see some rolling in here really quick. So let's give just a couple more and then we'll go over those answers and see how you guys did.
Perfect. I say let's go and close the poll and let's cover those.
All right. So question 1, we had fill in the blank. Good data equals clean data. While detailed, I can't completely disagree with you, but clean data is really what we're looking for. So yes, we really should be detailed, but it should be a nice, clean, detailed database that we have in here. I did see a couple of superpowered. I could also argue that that is correct, but the real one we're looking for, make sure we have that good, clean data in our system. Question 2, we have accounts can be added to the CRM in what 2 ways? And it looks like with 84% of you, manually or via an integration is a correct answer. So again, this is where we came in. We manually added that insurance policy, but you can have a data feed for those investment ones that we have in there. So we had both for Kevin. We just actually showed that manually. So again, manual or via an integration. Question 3, what field is used to connect memberships in Redtail? Remember, we just went over this one. This is with that type. So that way, if it is an individual to an individual, probably going to have quite a few relationship possibilities. You have that parent, ex, you have child, neighbor, cousin twice removed. You have best friend. You could even track more professionals as well. Versus when you have that trust or business, you can only have so many to choose from. So again, it's based off of that type, not necessarily status, category, or source when it comes to memberships. And then our last question here, what contact relationships are linked in the family section? And with 81% correct here, we have spouses and dependents only. Remember, this is really only those kind of tax definition. If we can't claim them there, that's where memberships get involved. So again, your spouses and your dependents, that's who we can track within our family section. Not too bad though.
Not bad at all. All right, that was a pretty easy first section of today. So what our plan is, and we're about 4 minutes ahead of schedule. That's definitely fine. That'll give us a little extra time later. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break. Catherine, we're going to take a break real fast. We're going to put up a little counter, but we're going to come back at, let's say, we're going to do 10:27. We're going to do that. So 10:27 Pacific time is we're going to meet back here. If you need to get a drink, get a snack, go for it. Again, don't close the Zoom. You might have to relaunch into it. Just keep it open so we can stay up. But again, let's take that 10-minute break and we will talk to you in just then.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.